Yummy, authentic Sephardic-Turkish borrecas, just like my grandmother used to make. You will never try a more delicious potato and cheese hand pie. Sally, that girl, in the kitchen. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sally, that girl, in the kitchen. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to make Sephardic-Turkish borrecas, potato and cheese hand pies. But not just any hand pies. These are the Sephardic-Turkish borrecas. So if you've seen any of my videos before, you may know that I am of Sephardic-Turkish descent. All four of my grandparents were Sephardic-Turkish. So growing up, we ate a whole lot of these borrecas, and I consider myself privileged because both of my grandmothers used to make them. So today I'm going to teach you the way that I learned how to make them from my abuela, Violeta, who in turn taught my mom how to make them, and of course me. I remember being a child sitting at my abuela's table and learning how to put these together. I can still see it clearly, and I still do it exactly the way that she taught me so many years ago. So I'm super excited to teach you how to make these. These are my most requested recipe ever. People are always asking me to teach them how to make these. So guess what? Lucky you. Today I'm going to teach you how. So I'm super excited. Let's not wait another second and let's get started. For the dough part of today's recipe, you will need 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, 1/2 cup of warm water, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 egg, which you'll be using for an egg wash, and then a couple of ounces of shredded Parmesan cheese for sprinkling on top of the borrecas. For the filling part of today's recipe, you will need 2 medium russet potatoes, 1 pound of shredded kashkaval cheese, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. If needed, you're going to taste it first, and 2 large eggs. I will be using Bulgarian kashkaval cheese for my borrecas today, which is the cheese that my grandmothers would have used back in Turkey. Kashkaval is amazing for borrecas, but I will also include the link in the description of this video of my tapada de papi queso, or potato and cheese borreca pie, to give you another option in case you're not able to find the kashkaval cheese. But definitely try to get your hands on it because it is well worth it. You will also need a cutting board and a knife and a potato peeler, a thin, long knife, a large fork, such as a serving fork, or you can use a whisk or a dough whisk instead, 2 teaspoons, a bowl and a cheese grater for grating your kashkaval cheese, a potato masher, a large baking sheet and some parchment paper, some dry measuring cups, some wet measuring cups, some measuring spoons, a colander, some oven mitts, 2 large bowls and a large spoon for mixing, and 2 smaller bowls and 2 forks for beating your eggs, along with a pastry brush. You will also need a medium-sized pot with a lid, and you'll need a rolling pin of some sort. You can use a large one, a small one, or a handheld roller. I actually love working with the handheld roller because I love the precision I get, but you can use any type of rolling pin. And finally, you will need either a dough cover or some plastic wrap to be able to cover your dough. So now that we have all of our ingredients and tools together, let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is fill your medium-sized pot with some cool water from the sink. Then you're going to want to grab your potatoes and you are going to peel them and you are going to chop them into small pieces. Then just bring the potatoes over to the pot with the cool water and you're just going to add the potatoes right in. And then what you're going to do is you're going to grab your lid and put it on off center. And then you're going to turn your heat on to high to allow your potatoes to cook. This should take about 30 minutes. Just remember to take a peek at them every so often to make sure that your water does not overboil. So now we're going to work on our dough. The first thing you're going to want to do is add your flour to one of your large bowls. And then right on top of that, you're going to add in your salt. Then I am using my trusty large fork. As you know, I love using this. This is what my grandmother used to use, but you can use a dough whisk or a whisk instead. And you're just going to stir the two ingredients together. You just want to make sure that that salt becomes well incorporated into the flour. Now you're going to want to measure out your oil, and then you're going to add it right on top of these two ingredients. Just pour it all in. And then you're going to use that same fork or whatever tool you're using, and you're going to combine the oil with the flour and salt. So I'm just using my fork and I'm going in a circular motion. I can turn my bowl as I go, and I use my fork to scrape down the sides of my bowl. And you'll notice I use the side of my fork to break up any clumps. So as the oil incorporates with the dry ingredients, you're going to notice that these clumps form, which is perfect. That's what we want. We want all of that flour to be touched by the oil. So all I'm doing is using the side of my fork and going around and then cutting through the mixture to break up the big clumps and make it more into smaller sized pebbles. Now, you're going to repeat this process until you don't see any more white, dry flour. You want all of your mixture to have become these clumps of dough. But I will mention, sometimes you could be a little heavy-handed when you measure out your flour. So you're going to do this for a few minutes, and then after you've done it for a few minutes, if you notice that your mixture is too dry and you're not getting the clumps that I'm getting right here, that it's not clumping up and becoming these light brown, almost sandy colored pebbles, then you may want to add just another touch of oil. I would suggest doing no more than 1 tablespoon at a time until you get the right texture. Because as I said, sometimes you may have gone a little heavy-handed on the flour, and you definitely don't want the mixture to be dry. You want it to look like it's looking here. It's just become clumpy enough where I'm using the side of my fork and I'm breaking it down into pebbles, but you'll notice that the mixture kind of sticks together as I mix it. So now, once you're here and you've gotten to this point and you're happy with the consistency, you're going to measure out your water and you're going to take it over to the microwave and warm it up. You want it lukewarm, kind of warm to the touch, but not boiling hot. Maybe about 30-40 seconds, really depending on your microwave. And then you're going to pour that right on top of your mixture. And then you're going to continue with the same fork, and you're just going to mix all of the ingredients together. You will notice that at this point, very quickly, the mixture is going to become a dough. It takes no effort whatsoever. You're just going to mix with your fork, and very quickly that warm water that you've just added is going to help bring all of the ingredients together, and before you know it, you're going to have a cohesive dough, and it's going to be beautiful and perfect. I mean, how easy is making this dough? So now I just clean off my fork and I switch to my hands because, of course, when I'm working with dough, I have to get my hands in there. And then I just use my hands to make sure that all the ingredients are well incorporated. There's no real kneading here. It's just bringing it all together to make a nice ball of dough. We don't want to overwork the dough. We just want to bring it together. So really, that's all there is to it. I mean, it could not be any more simple. Making this dough is super easy, and you are going to find yourself using it in so many different applications because it's just amazing to work with, and it comes together really, really quickly. No heavy machinery, just your hands, a bowl, and a fork, and you're good to go. So now my dough is ready, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover it because I want to let it rest and I don't want it to dry out. So while I work on the rest of my ingredients, I'm just going to cover it either with plastic wrap or with a dough cover, and then I'm going to move on. So now, I'm going to start shredding my kashkaval cheese. As I told you earlier, I'm going to be using a Bulgarian kashkaval, which is really, really delicious in these. Borrecas kashkaval is the cheese that my grandmothers would use back in Turkey, and it's really very typical. This one is sheep's milk. They also make some with cow milk. They're all delicious. I happen to love this one in particular. So if you can find some good kashkaval cheese, I highly recommend it. This one, as I said, is Bulgarian, and it is fantastic. So now all you're going to want to do is shred the cheese. But actually, before I move on to do that, I checked my potatoes and they're boiling pretty strong at this point. So I'm going to lower my heat to low because they should be ready real soon. So now I'm going to go back to shredding my cheese. So all I'm doing is I'm grabbing my block and I'm going to use my regular box shredder and just shred it right into the bowl. I do recommend keeping the cheese cold because it definitely shreds a lot easier when it's nice and firm and nice and cold. And now it's ready for our borrecas. So now 30 minutes have passed and my potatoes should be ready. So all I'm going to do is grab a fork. Yep, they're nice and fork tender and they're perfect. So at this point, I'm going to turn off my heat and then I'm going to take my potatoes over to my sink where I have a colander and I'm just going to pour them right into the colander because I want to get rid of all that water. I don't want any of that moisture in my filling. So I'm just going to drain them really, really well. And then I'm going to grab my colander and I'm going to give it all a really good shake because I want to get rid of all of that excess liquid. And then my potatoes are going to be ready to be combined with all of my delicious ingredients. So now I'm going to grab them, bring them over and put them into one of my large bowls. And then while they're still nice and warm, I grab my potato masher and just give them all a really good mashing. They break down really, really quickly if you do this when they're nice and warm. And then, of course, I let my potatoes sit for a few minutes because I don't want them super hot when I start to add the rest of my ingredients. So now my potatoes have cooled down a little bit, and now I'm going to bring over that delicious shredded kashkaval cheese, and I'm going to add all of it right in. Yes, that's a lot of cheese, but we do want these to taste really, really cheesy. The potato is more of a binder and it just gives it the perfect consistency, but we want these to taste like cheese. So we added all of it in. We're going to use our large spoon and we're going to bring the two ingredients together. We're just going to make sure to incorporate them really well. Now, this is a little tip I always recommend. Once I incorporate these ingredients well, I don't add my raw eggs in. I just make sure to taste my mixture first because I want to know if I'm going to need to add a little bit of salt. So now is a good time to taste it before you add those eggs into the mixture. So yes, with this particular cheese, I think that I'm going to definitely add the salt. But if I were using the mixture that I use for my borreca pie, I probably would not because that contains feta, which is very salty. So just make sure to taste before you add your salt and make sure that it actually needs it. Then use the same spoon and make sure you incorporate that salt well. Mix it in really well with the rest of your ingredients. So now that that's all in, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to taste it one more time. I just want to make sure that I have the right amount of salt and that it's absolutely perfect. Yep. Now we're good. It's perfect. It's got the right touch. It's perfect exactly as I need it to be. So now I'm going to crack a couple of eggs into a small bowl and then just using a fork, I'm going to beat them really, really well. Just get them really, really well combined. And then once they're well beaten, I'm going to bring over this bowl and now I'm going to add the raw eggs to my mixture. And then, yep, you guessed it, just grab your spoon and incorporate those beaten eggs really well into the mixture. The addition of potato and eggs into the cheese is really critical because if not, the cheese would just melt inside of the borreca and it would become hollow. But by preparing this delicious mixture, it's going to be filled with cheesy yumminess. It's going to be perfect. So at this point, I'm going to preheat my oven to 350 degrees, and I'm going to prepare my nice big baking sheet by lining it with parchment paper. And I want to make sure I have a rack placed in the center of my oven. Now, I'm going to grab my 2 teaspoons because I'm going to use those to fill my borrecas, but I'm going to show you how I prepare my dough. I'm going to do it today the way my grandmother taught me because this is her standard borreca recipe, which I absolutely love because it makes 18 borrecas, high, life, just a beautiful, beautiful number. This is her standard borreca dough, and you should be able to get 18 from it. So what I did was I just grabbed my ball of dough, placed it right on my very clean counter, and I'm rolling it out into a log. I just want to make sure that the log is equally thick from end to end. I just don't need to stretch it out too much, but I do want to make sure that it's pretty much the same thickness throughout because I am going to divide this log in order to get my 18 pieces of dough for my borrecas. So what I do is I divide the log in 3 parts, 1, 2, and 3, and then I actually am going to see, yeah, I did pretty well. The pieces are pretty well sized. And then from each of these 3 pieces, I am going to get 6 pieces. So what I do is I just cut 1 piece in half. And then from each half, I cut 3 pieces. So I have 3, then I take the other one, and then I have another 3. And then, of course, I just repeat the process for that second piece of the log, cut it in half, and then 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3. And now I have 12 pieces. And then I'm going to do the same with the final one, cut it in half. Then I'm going to do 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, and 3. And now I have 18 pieces. And then I just take each one and then I just gently roll it into a ball. I don't want to overwork the dough. I just want to make them very gently into the shape of a ball because it's going to help me when I'm making the round shape of the borreca to have them already shaped into a ball. So now I just grab them, place them right back in a bowl, and then I wipe down my counter so I can get started. So I grab 1 dough ball and I place it on the counter and I use the hard part of my palm to just kind of flatten it. You can use your fingertips, you can use your palm, you can use this handheld roller, a rolling pin, whatever you like working with. These can really be done 100% by hand even, or of course the rolling pin really just helps us out. Then we just make the shape of a circle and then we make it nice and flat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fill this delicious dough with that amazing cheesy filling that we've created. So how do we do that? We use our spoons. This way our fingers don't become all cheesy every single time we fill one of our borrecas. So I use 1 teaspoon and then I kind of use the other teaspoon to just help me add that filling right onto my dough, and that way my hands remain clean as I work. So I just want to make sure to get a nice amount of that yummy cheesy filling into my borreca. And then you're going to grab one end of the dough and you're going to fold it over. Now, sometimes what I do is I kind of use my thumbs and I push my filling in as I fold my dough over, and then I continue to use my thumbs and my pointers, and I just bring both layers of dough together. Now, if you didn't have a perfect circle and you don't have a perfect semicircle at this point, it's okay. You can either just fold it like this, or you can use a knife and then just trim off a little bit of the excess dough to kind of make the shape a little more semicircular. And my grandmother actually actually used to just sometimes seal these with the back of a fork. She didn't always do the little braiding on the end, but I really, really love my borreca when it has that little crispy braided edge. So I'm going to be braiding them today. But if you don't want to braid, you can use the back of a fork, of course. Now, grab your borreca, and then what do I mean by braiding? We're going to do what I like to call the pinch and fold. That is a word that came out of making these with a group of friends. We call it the pinchifol. And what we do is we literally just pinch and fold, and then pinch and fold, and we go all around the borreca from one end to another, and we create this little fluted little edge, this little beautiful little braided end that is going to be crispy and delicious, and it's going to keep that yummy filling inside of our borreca. Then we just place it on our prepared pan, and we have 1 borreca down, 17 to go. We're going to do 18 borrecas after all, and the process is the same. We just grab our dough, we press it down on our counter, we can use our hand, or we can use a roller or rolling pin, and then we're just gonna fill them up one by one until we make 18 beautiful, delicious, gorgeous, did I mention delicious Sephardic-Turkish borrecas. These are gonna be so good, and they're really very fun to put together. So now I'm just showing you the process again so that you're sure to have a clear picture of what needs to be done. As you saw, we flattened out the dough, made it circular. We're filling it up with this delicious cheesy filling, and then we're just gonna grab our dough, we're gonna fold it over very gently. I'm using my thumbs, I'm pushing back that filling. I fold it over, and then I just use my fingers to press down onto the dough, making sure that both sides come together. And then all I'm gonna do is shape my borreca. Actually, I'm not gonna cut off anything from this one because it's looking pretty good. All I'm gonna do is I'm going to braid the edges. I'm going to pinch and fold from one end to the other. And they're looking beautiful, and they're gonna be so tasty. They're smelling incredible. Yummy, yummy. Look at how beautiful this guy is, and it's ready for the tray. Gorgeous. Now, I will mention borreca making is such a fun activity that it is amazing to do with friends. You can make a huge batch, and I've done that many times with my friends over the years, and we just get together, we make a ton of dough, a ton of filling, and then we just gather around and we chit chat and we have an amazing time as we put these beautiful borrecas together. So definitely you can do this on your own, but it's also a very, very fun group activity. So I'm going to show you one last borreca because I just want to give you a different angle, a wider view, and then you're just going to see that I did this one completely by hand. I didn't even need my roller. I flatten it out, fill it with this yummy cheese filling. I'm going to fold my dough over, gently push that filling in with my thumbs, bring the dough together. Then I'm going to just grab it and I'm going to braid the edges. Once you do a few of these, they're gonna come so naturally. They just come together really quickly. And before you know it, you have a beautiful tray of borrecas for everyone to enjoy. The only problem is they are gonna be requested all of the time because they are that good. So I've made my 18 borrecas, and as you can see, I have some leftover filling. So if you choose to, you can double the dough recipe and make 36 instead, or you can just bake this off in a Pyrex or a Corningware, sprinkle a little Parmesan on top and just bake it off. It's delicious. You can make a tapada. I'm going to link that in the description. Or you can just put it in a Ziploc bag and then stick it in the freezer and pull it out at another time when you feel like whipping up a few borrequitas. So my borrecas are all ready, and what I'm gonna do is I like to pinch them so that they can release their steam as they're baking, and that way there's less of a chance of them popping as they bake. So I just take a sharp, thin knife and I just pinch them twice, and then I break an egg into a bowl, and then I beat it really, really well with a fork. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give all of my borrecas an egg wash. I'm going to use a pastry brush, and then I'm just going to go over one by one and just paint them really nicely with this beautiful egg, because it's really going to help develop a beautiful color for my borrecas. They're really going to look spectacular with this beautiful egg wash we're putting on top of them. So make sure that you brush them all really well. And then once you have, what we're going to do is we're going to sprinkle the top of these. And I like to use Parmesan cheese. That's the way my grandmother used to do it, whether you use shredded Parmesan in a bag, or you can even use the grated Parmesan that comes in a bottle. Either way, you give them that beautiful little touch of cheese on top, and it just makes them look extra golden, extra special, and extra delicious. So you make sure to give them all a nice little coating of the cheese, and then once you've done so, they're going to be ready for the oven. Tell me these guys don't look absolutely gorgeous. If you've never had an authentic Sephardic-Turkish borreca, you are in for a treat. There's nothing quite like it. They are in such high demand around here. Everybody adores them. So now you're going to place them in the oven and set a 30-minute timer to allow them to bake. And after 30 minutes, they are golden and they're gorgeous. They're flaky. They're amazing. They smell incredible. The entire house smells incredible. There's nothing quite like the smell of a fresh baked Sephardic-Turkish borreca. The pastry and the filling, it's just perfect. It's an incredible combination. I'm telling you, my grandmothers really knew what they were doing when they made these borrecas, and I am so grateful that they taught my mom and me. So now I let them cool right on the baking sheet. You don't really need to put them on a cooling rack. Just let them cool for a few minutes so they're not too steamy, and then you can arrange them on a platter and serve them. They're going to be so delicious. Everyone is going to be in awe. Everyone is going to want one. No, they're going to want 2 or 3. That's the thing about these Sephardic-Turkish borrecas. They fly. Once you bring them out, they are going to quickly disappear. It's like magic. They're just so perfect and addicting. And if you haven't tried these, you really must. They're really like nothing you've ever tried before. So now for my favorite part. I'm going to pick this one right here in the center. Look how absolutely gorgeous it is. The pastry is perfect. That dough became beautiful and golden, and it's going to be just flaky and delicious. It's really just the perfect bite. It's really probably my favorite food on the entire planet. It is really that delicious, and it's just perfect. It's just the perfect bite. Perfection. The dough is flaky and just so amazingly delicious. And look at the filling. It's just absolutely perfect. You see how it didn't become hollowed out? It's just got the perfect consistency and the contrast of that flaky dough. Look at how it just flakes right off. It's just absolutely divine, and it's just filled so good with that yummy cheesiness. It's like nothing you've ever tried. The cheese runs all the way throughout from one end to the other so that you get the perfect bite each time. It's just absolutely divine. And look at how flaky that dough is. It's literally just flaking right off because it's just so light and perfect. Amazing, amazing. It's the perfect vessel for that yummy, delicious, cheesy filling. It's just absolutely delicious. So, so good. So how amazing do these look, and how much fun was that? And they are so not difficult to make. People just think they're super labor intensive, and really they're not that hard to make at all. They just take a little practice and a little time, and they come out amazing. They are worth all of the effort. And the truth is, I think People think they're really difficult to make because the grandmothers were really secretive about their family recipes and they didn't want to share. And I feel completely opposite. I think that these recipes that have been handed down from generation to generation need to live on, and it is our duty to share them with the world. That is one of the main reasons I started this YouTube channel, because I really wanted to share, especially the recipes that I learned from my grandmothers, from my mom, from my family members, because there's nothing more special than a recipe that reminds you of your childhood, of your heritage, and this is definitely one of those. You are going to love them. Trust me. No, better yet, don't trust me. You're gonna have to try to make this recipe yourself. And of course, if you've enjoyed today's recipe, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Share away, share the love the same way that I share it with you. And if you're not already subscribed to Sally That Girl in the Kitchen, make sure to subscribe and to touch that little notification bell so that you don't miss out on all of the amazing recipes that I'm always putting up. And explore, of course, under my video tab, because I have tons and tons of recipes already there that I know you're gonna love. And if you're not already following me on social media, you can follow me as Sally That Girl in the Kitchen on Facebook, Instagram, and on Pinterest. And you can find me as Sally That Girl FL on Twitter, Snapchat, and on TikTok. I really hope you enjoyed these recipes, and I really hope I made my grandmothers proud. See you next time. Sally That Girl in the Kitchen.